Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecasts for week commencing the 9th of December. I'm going to share with you some standout details to look out for, but please stay with me. I'll then share on screen the event chart right at the start of the week. That always provides some extra perspective. Then as influences feed in, I'll explore those frame by frame to give you a real clear picture of what this week holds, and then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you have any thoughts, please share them. This is very much a community. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I'd be grateful if you did so now. 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please click or tap that bell notification symbol too. And also, I'd appreciate if you liked and also shared the videos as well. I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these. As they come in, I share as is. You can also order your personal forecast for year 2025, totally unique to each person it's produced for. But you also get your free gift of your zodiac, general, love, Vedic and Chinese written forecast, as well as your life roadmap report. That's a really crucial part of the package because that helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our lives so far. The forecast helps us to time our moves over the next year as acutely as we can. There's 30% off. Please see the link below for more. If you prefer to have an equal house perspective, please order whole sign. If you'd like to have a draconic soul perspective, you can order that. Or if you don't know your time, you can order my solar perspective instead. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive forecast, please see the link beneath this video. This week begins with a mighty opposition between the Sun and also Jupiter. That can give us a sense of uplift and optimism, but it's one that we have to handle with a degree of care. And the reason for that is that Jupiter, the planet of positivity, is in a retrograde, but it is in an opposition with the Sun. So the conversations we have can be buoyant. We also have Mars, the planet of thrust, of action and desire, now in retrograde, but in a broadly positive link to Mercury, like the Sun in the sign of Sagittarius. So if we're thinking about travel, or we're thinking about getting away for the festivities, spending it in a different location, or there is a contractual matter that we're discussing, again, there's a lot of thrust in the mix, but Mercury's retrograde, like Jupiter's, along with Mars, suggests we do need to be cautious not to rush things. Also, at the start of this week, Venus is still very close to Pluto. Pluto in the sign of Aquarius is really making us much more conscious of our individual rights, but also how we connect to one another. Venus adds another dimension to that, but certainly in terms of the time of year, that can be a very social possibility. But also as this week goes on, Venus does go into an opposition with Mars, so I will share about that. And then, ironically, as the week draws to a close, the full moon in the sign of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, also sees Mercury end its retrograde, which began at the end of November, but Mercury is still going to be in its post-retrograde shadow through to the early part of January. So we still need to be as precise and cautious around handling information as possible. Now that full moon at the end of this week is also in a square, a broad square with Neptune. And Neptune can be a shimmering, mesmeric and magical influence, but it also can be very distorting. So I do need to unpack that for you too. Now on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout, I think, is the position of the moon, because that's very close to Neptune. So as Monday goes forwards, the moon also will go forwards and apply to Neptune, suggesting for some of us, despite the potential for optimism, we could feel a little bit unsure about how to go forwards with certain things. Maybe a sense of uncertainty, perhaps it is a lack of clarity. But you can also see the Sun at 17 degrees 24 opposite Jupiter. And that is a very buoyant combination. And ordinarily this would certainly, if Jupiter wasn't in a retrograde, give us a real sense of possibilities. But Mars is still pretty close to the trine to Mercury, and despite his retrograde now, if we have a plan that we're clear about, we can certainly execute it with a lot of thrust. But that thrust, again, needs to be mindful of the details, because all of this week, the planet of contraction, Saturn, is tightening up in its right angle to the planet of growth, Jupiter, and that square is going to peak on the 24th of December. So that's a big one in terms of the structural energies of astrology. So we just need to be mindful that Jupiter in Gemini can be brilliant for making us enthusiastic about the interchange of ideas, but we mustn't rush things, and Saturn in Pisces makes us aware of the psychological and emotional dimension of whatever we're communicating. So it's a bubbly start to the week for sure, but we just need to be very in touch with why we've got the plan we have, but also how we're going to execute it. Now, in terms of the full moon, a full moon in Gemini, if we think about it, Gemini is a very rational sign, it's an air sign, but it's also to do with communication. So when the Sun in Sagittarius is facing the moon in Gemini, it could be that if there are certain parts of our situation where there isn't a level of agreement or accord, that could become more obvious. But because Neptune is in a broad T-square to both, we need to make sure that if someone's telling us something, we're clear about what it is they're saying. So sometimes that means we can take people at face value, at others we can't, unfortunately. So I would be a little bit skeptical, despite the fact that Mercury starts to go forwards, because Mercury, after all, is still detrimented in Sagittarius, can rush things, can have a little bit of impatience for the details and precision that Mercury, through its rulership of Virgo, would prefer us to stay with. But certainly if you are wanting to book that holiday, get away from it all over the festivities, Mercury going direct at the end of this week, on the face of it, seems a very big asset, but we still need to make sure we don't rush things. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. If you've yet to watch your deep dive for each of the individual zodiac signs for year 2025, please see beneath this video and also the individual segments. So Aries, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast really is quite fascinating. Yours is the sign of action. You're the initiator of the zodiac, but your ruler, Mars, which is very much to do with that energy, is now in retrograde. But that doesn't change the fact it's still in a great location, Leo, which gives you an opportunity to showcase your charisma. It also links very productively to Mercury, the planet of communication, although it too is in retrograde. But if you did need to say something, as long as it's well thought through, you can do so with conviction and enthusiasm right at the start of this week. So whether it's someone that you're trying to get to know that you're really drawn to, whether it's around a business project, whether it's around a social plan, perhaps to travel, there is the potential to take steps forwards, but it might not go quite at the speed of light, which you could get frustrated by. So by seeing the big picture, it will help you to just go with the flow, because at the start of this week, the part of your chart that's very much to do with your long-term plan is really powerfully accentuated, and the connections you have that are really meaningful can become more so over time. But it is true that as the week begins, the connection between the moon and Neptune can just echo into your situation some vague doubts or uncertainties. Now, because Mercury goes direct at the end of this week, communications generally, particularly if you're trying to set up a travel plan, anything around a contract, if you've been doing a proposal for a potential client and it's been delayed, of course, things could speed up. But because of the energy of Neptune applying to the full moon as the week draws to a close, being in touch with the more hidden or subtle parts of your situation as much as the more upfront and obvious ones is going to be really important. So I think this week could see some very powerful conversations. And it may be in a completely social situation. You could have a fabulous time, particularly with Venus going face to face with Mars, your ruler, at the heart of the week. There may even be a key connection from a romantic viewpoint. But as the week draws to a close, that full moons essentially bring into the open something. And if you are needing to work with someone or people who have very different philosophies, a very different worldview from you, you can become much more conscious of that, to be honest. And as much as there's part of you that may want to take the lead, be very dynamic, create a sense of enthusiasm, just stay attuned to the people around you who are not quite as invested in what you're trying to do as you would like. It's just a fact of life. We can't have everybody on our side. But if you're just conscious of all these retrogrades and the impact of them, you can still take that action you're famed for, but with reasonable expectations. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. With Taurus, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast begins, I think, in a very bright way. Yes, there are lots of retrogrades because of Jupiter in your second house, very much to do with everyday money, in an opposition with the Sun. But Mercury in that location of the Sun, the 8th house of shared resources, also retrograde, but angling back productively to Mars, now retrograde, in your 4th house of home, family and emotion. But sometimes more challenging aspects can trigger some fortune. And because Venus, your ruler, is high in the sky, your ability to cultivate important relationships could be very good for your bank balance. So whether it's a small enterprise that you're starting, an ongoing business you have, or you work for someone, don't underestimate just how much your people skills can feed into the situation this week. That said, of course, Mercury in a retrograde does suggest that someone close to you might not necessarily see things the same way as you, and that could be, of course, about the Christmas budget. But that's the kind of conversations that a lot of partnerships have at this time of year. But as the week goes on and Mercury goes direct, if you have been waiting for some news on perhaps a pension application, something to do with a legacy or an inheritance, or you're reconfiguring your long-term finances by squeezing more from your future assets, Mercury going direct obviously will be of help. But the key is, of course, the full moon. And that full moon suggests you may have to confront certain parts of the ins and outs of your finances, or the fact that your values may be different to someone you're close to, whilst Neptune, the planet of the most spiritual expectations possible in your 11th house, just creates the potential for some unreality. It might not be yours, it could be the person that you need to deal with. But on the whole, yes, you would think with retrogrades that can cause some delays and frustrations. That's understandable and it could happen. But the big picture suggests, with Pluto now in Aquarius for the long term, but very close to Venus at the start of this week, that ability that you have to use your earthy charm in order to cultivate a good connection to people is definitely to the fore. Now, of course, as the week goes on, Venus does go into an opposition with Mars. It's an interesting one. If you're wanting to take more of a lead in a relationship and you're sensing there's a bit of a shift of power, then that subtlety that can be so helpful to you may be the best way to deal with anyone's resistance to how you might want to do something different. And one of the things you might want to do different, at least through to the early part of January, is around who you're going to get together with over the festivities, because Mars going retrograde in the 4th house, it could mean that if there's someone you're not quite so comfortable with, that can create some resistance. But again, charm and your people skills is really going to be the great way that you're going to navigate this week, and I think potentially achieve some kind of surprising for some, perhaps not for others, but some kind of uplift in your situation. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. So Gemini, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast has a very bubbly vibe to it. Yes, there are some retrogrades in the mix, not least Mars now. So if you are asserting something that you're really passionate about, Mars is linked with Mercury at the start of this week, suggests you can do so with clarity and also a determination. However, also at the start of the week, the opposition between Jupiter in your sign, retrograde, and the Sun also adds some levity to proceedings. But if there is a relationship situation that has been proven a little challenging, and it doesn't have to be just in a personal context, it could be professionally, I think by the end of this week and over the following fortnight, it will all come up to the boil. Not least because with Venus applying to Pluto at the start of this week, the 9th house can be the higher truth of your relationship, but it's the fact that Neptune is in the mix, particularly at the start of this week. And as much as you may feel personally in a good mood, if you're working in an environment which is not very clear, they change what's expected, someone may be a little bit unavailable or confusing, that's Neptune's influence. So by the end of the week, the full moon in your sign will encourage you to release yourself from a situation which isn't working around a relationship, but that could be professionally as much as personally. And with Mercury going direct, you may also hear another person's viewpoint or input into the scenario, which actually helps you to make sense of some of the confusion that there has been. So obviously astrology does depend on what's going on in our unique situation. So for you, if you've got some very constructive alliances at the moment, I think the chance to enjoy them is strong this week. That things might not go exactly as you expect, well, that's possible. But if things aren't so positive in your situation, that sense of frustration could just give you the driving force to pivot towards an employer, a company or friends where you do feel more heard and where you do feel it's more collective. So the longer term future for you, particularly with Venus in the sign of Aquarius right through to the 3rd of January, can be very social, especially if you are moving around, meeting different types of folks, mixing and mingling, and Mercury going direct at the end of the week will help that, but clarity will become your driving force as the week draws to a close. And if you can't feel it, you may want to take the action to change your circumstances. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. So Cancer, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast has had a lot of emphasis recently on the practicalities of life, your work, your routines, order, anything to do with efficiencies, maybe even fitness, diet, exercise. But Mercury, of course, has been in this area too, in retrograde. Maybe there have been some tangles around appointments or small details have perhaps caused some mischief. But right at the start of this week, even though Mars is asking you to reflect on what to do with your resources, it's linked to Mercury, suggests you could make a decisive move which squeezes a bit more value out of something you have already. Now that may be that you're going to free up some space in your home by clearing out some stuff you no longer need and selling it off. It may be that you could scrutinise some of the policies you've got for various life products and so on. Could you get some more value there? And the reason I mention them is because of Pluto moving into the 8th house and Venus applying right at the start of the week. That's a great combination to be thinking seriously about making contingencies for the long term. But the 8th house can also be where we're most invested emotionally. Venus can also be about romance. If there is somebody that you're drawn to at this time, by the middle of the week, the energy that goes back between you could be palpable as Venus goes opposite Mars. But there may also be another part of your nature that could be a bit more impulsive about spending some money, perhaps on a Christmas gift. But also by the end of this week, despite Mercury going forwards, and if you have been waiting on a job application or to hear about an important schedule, the fact that the full moon is in your 12th house just asks you to make sure that you're staying integrated with the more psychological, spiritual and philosophical parts of your existence. Unfortunately, a 12th house full moon could also tease into the open some opposition that you haven't been fully aware of. It may be, to be honest, at work. So one of the most important things this week is to make sure that your normal, meticulous approach to managing resources, because you have got a gift for that, that's something you definitely do not take your eye off. But you know, as this week moves on, by the early part of the week, but beyond Monday, the moon is going to apply to the North Node and then back to Mars. If you're someone with more of a vision about what you should be doing professionally and you're listening to your instincts, which when you're on top form certainly can be a great guide for you, there is a chance that you could have an interview this week, or at least apply for a situation which could work out to be a really excellent opportunity, especially if you feel in your existing paid role or business role that you're not receiving the value for your effort. And so there is change in the works, but if you're in an ongoing situation, just watch out for some office politics as this week draws to a close. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. Leo, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast has some fascinating dimensions to it. On one hand, with Mars going backwards now in your sign in its retrograde, that does suggest that through to the 6th of January, however much you inject thrust and effort into something you feel very strongly and inspired by, it might not quite rattle along at the pace you would like. But it also can make you a bit more prideful. However, right at the start of this week, Mars is linked to Mercury, also retrograde, in your sector of expression and creativity, gives you a great platform to say how you feel, but come across in a very convincing, but also very enthusiastic way. Both Mars in Leo, Mercury in Sagittarius are in fire signs, so that's passionate. However, because Venus is now in your sector of relating, and right at the start of this week is in a very close alliance to Pluto, the value of your alliances is going to be emphasized at this time. But by the middle of the week, Venus goes into an opposition with Mars. If your desire to get what you want from a situation is stronger than your desire to collaborate with someone, that could cause an issue, particularly in a romantic tie. So if you and someone you've been seeing want different things, by the time we get to the full moon at the end of the week and Mercury goes direct, despite the fact that there is lots of potential for social interaction this week, if you're seeing things in very different ways, you may have a big decision to make, because I feel the full moon is a kind of crossroads moment. It's where you either go for what you need as an individual, the position of the sun and Mercury going direct, or you go with what works for the people you're more connected to as a collective, usually our friends, or perhaps the long-term plan. So it's important not to let Mars going into retrograde in your sign pulverize the sensitivity of Venus in the 7th house, which can be great for creating more harmony. If you can keep that balance nicely attuned, if you do encounter someone for the first time, it could be a really lovely connection, one that really does give you a sense of excitement, both of you. If, however, you're involved in a relationship where you're becoming increasingly aware that you see things differently, you may need to work at that tie, to be honest. Also, the fact that the North Node is in the part of your situation to do with freedom, and that's linking back to Mars in your sign as well. If there is a part of you that would rather just be that free spirit and enjoy the festivities over the next few weeks on your own terms, that could be an energy that speaks into this week as well. As you come to the end of the week, I feel a lot of energy that you've been unsure of will start to clarify, and that will help to release some tension, but also create some greater clarity for you. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. Virgo, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast still continues to put a lot of focus on how things feel, but also your immediate domestic environment, family affairs, maybe to do with things like the Christmas arrangements. But with Mercury retrograde there, Mercury retrograde in the 4th house does have a bit of a challenge, because the sign of Sagittarius, the host, can be very open, but the 4th house can be very private, and we can find it difficult to say how we feel. Therefore, the emotions circulate around us. And yet Mars, having just slammed on the celestial brakes, primes up Mercury at the start of this week, and you could find that something very deeply rooted within your subconscious may need to come out, but whether you can let it out might be the thing. That could cause some headaches or other uncomfortable physical feelings. Also, right at the start of the week, the moon applies to Neptune. Depending on where you've got planets in Virgo, but particularly if it's later, there could also be a sense of uncertainty about one relationship. And Venus, of course, has applied to Pluto in a very practical area, suggesting that your relationships at work can be changing too. Or maybe who does and contributes what, just domestically, is something you're much more conscious of. But then Mars in the 12th house can point towards secret love affairs, or even obsessions, or even someone you used to be connected to. And as Venus goes opposite Mars at the heart of the week, you could find yourself yearning for that connection or unsure of what to do. By the end of the week, Mercury goes direct. That can help to release some pressure, but the full moon in your 10th house is a very public place for the moon to occur. That makes it very difficult to disguise how you feel, but that does square back to Neptune. So whether it's professionally or personally, relationships seem to be very delicately poised at this time. The best way to deal with all of this is to accept that none of us is stone. We're always evolving. You're a mutable sign. You do have an appreciation for a degree of certainty in your life structure, but if that has become a little bit too rigid and that's preventing you from flowing, this would be a good time to think more about What do you need? What do you feel you need in your situation? And that may not be something that speaks to that more practical side of your nature. So it's a tender week potentially, Virgo. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. For Libra, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast suggests, with Mercury still in retrograde, that there may have been some crosswires, some difficulty with software, tickets, that kind of stuff. But Mars is now in a retrograde in your sector of friendship, but also your long-term plan. But ironically, the two planets meet at the start of this week, giving you a great platform to connect to the people who share your enthusiasm or who you enjoy being with. And with Venus, your ruler, now in the most charismatic, even glamorous part of your scope, going face to face with Mars at the heart of this week, don't underestimate the impact you can have on anyone you encounter this week. But of course, we do have the full moon at the end of the week. What's the significance of that to you? Well, I feel because it's in the 9th house, that can be about the big picture. It can be about things like contracts, travel plans. The 3rd house is those everyday details and conversations. But Neptune in the 6th house is in a T-square to both as the week draws to a close. So despite the fact that Mercury goes direct as the week ends, don't necessarily expect that everything is going to clear away and clarity be 100%. But within all of that, I still feel that this is a week when your abilities as a relator are really going to shine. And there could be, if you're single, this is something you want, there could be an electric connection to someone. And even if it's just a flirtatious moment, it will certainly give your spirits quite the lift. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. So Scorpio, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast suggests there may be an opportunity this week to reprise and revise your approach to money, but also your professional strands. Mars, your traditional ruler, maintains a very authoritative role in your chart despite being in retrograde now, and links to Mercury, the planet of commerce, in your 2nd house of everyday money, also retrograde. But right at the start of this week, that could set in motion a conversation or a train of thought which could be very valuable to you. There could also be encouragement from someone very close to you, a family member, may provide some support emotionally, perhaps even consider some financial support, or perhaps even working from home. By the middle of the week, as Venus goes opposite Mars, it is going to be important to make sure that you keep in balance any ambitions with the more emotional needs that you have, and also stay sensitive to any support you're getting from someone close to you. But the full moon by the end of the week suggests that that reprise can then become formally revised as you find Mercury goes forwards, but the energy in the 8th house, which is your longer term sector, very much to do with business, that can give you, with Jupiter there too, despite its retrograde, a different perception. So I feel that maybe stopping, pausing, revisiting, doing some more soundings, getting some advice can all be very, very helpful to you. It's just that when it comes to your personal situation and resources, Neptune's T-square to the full moon at the end of the week could still make it a bit difficult to hold back from being very generous with loved ones when it comes to your Christmas gifts. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. Sagittarius, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast begins with Mercury still in retrograde in your sign. The great news, that comes to an end at the end of this week. In fact, there's a lot of retrograde energy. Mars in your 9th house of adventure and expansion links back to Mercury, but in a very productive way, but is now retrograde. Also, Jupiter, your ruler, is in an opposition with the Sun at the start of this week in retrograde. So it all seems that things won't flow quite as quickly as you would like. But what about Venus? Venus is applied to Pluto at the start of this week, then goes opposite Mars. You're someone who has a passion for knowledge and a passion for travel and a passion for exchanging information, and that can be lit up this week. It's all about understanding the impact that Saturn and Neptune have had and are having. For example, Saturn is inching towards an exact square with your ruler, which will occur on Christmas Eve. So for example, if you're in an emotional relationship where you don't feel very heard, seen or acknowledged, that could provide some mischief. But then if we flip it over, having the Sun and Mercury direct by the end of this week in your sign is really urging you to focus on what's really important to you, and then with the help of Venus and Pluto, expressing that to the people who matter. So your emotional situation, home or family life, might not be perfect, things might not be going quite at the pace any of us would like, but there's still an overarching positivity. And by the end of this week, even if a relationship matter has felt quite challenging, at least I feel the full moon can push it out into the open and release any pressure. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. So Capricorn, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast continues to have an emphasis on your 12th house, which can be delicate. Mercury continues to be retrograde in this area. That can make it feel that we're cut off, detached from others. We're not hearing from people in the way we'd normally expect. It can also emphasize who's not for us quite so much. We can feel a bit isolated, but in terms of the opportunity, it's when we can think deeply about what we want, what we need, and also work at some old issues and try to release them. Also, Mars, the planet of drive, although it is in retrograde, it's in your 8th house and links back to Mercury in the 12th, right at the start of the week. Thinking again about an approach to your long-term business or financial planning could actually be a very smart thing to do, especially as some genuine good fortune is still possible with Venus now in your 2nd house. The challenge in the middle of the week could be, if you do have some kind of uptick or windfall, to not be too quick to splash it out as Venus goes opposite Mars. Is there also someone who's creeping up on your senses? It could be someone that you're encountering through your work. This person may not have told you that they like you, but the energy between you can become much more obvious at the heart of this week. That brings us to the full moon as the week draws to a close. And it is in the, sees the moon for you in house 6. Very much about practicalities, but across the heavens, the sun in 12. Is it the case that something around your work or your health may need to be reset, rebalanced in some kind of way? With Mercury ending its retrograde, you could hear from someone, you could gain an insight, have a flash of inspiration, which helps you to become more settled in how you feel. But Saturn, your ruler, is going to be applying to Jupiter, the planet of fortune, in an exact square by Christmas Eve. But what I would say is, if you are feeling that your physical vitality and your emotional energy is low and you feel very sensitive, by the time of the winter solstice on the 21st and the sun's return to your sign, which is at the end of next week, you are going to experience a genuine renaissance. But there are some very positive strands at the moment, but it's just dealing with some of those delicate, more psychological energies washing around your situation. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. So Aquarius, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast suggests with Venus, the planet of allure, aligning with Pluto, the planet of power, right at the start of the week, that you're going to become much more conscious of your star quality. I certainly hope so. But friendships in your long-term plan may have been a bit disrupted recently because of Mercury's retrograde. Perhaps you haven't wanted to socialise as much. Perhaps you've rethought something. And that can continue to be a strand for the whole week. But Jupiter, the planet of possibility, is opposite the Sun. You can gain by collaborative events. Don't be too distracted by the retrogrades of this week. For sure, Mars going into a retrograde in your 7th house could slow certain connections down, but in a way, Mars in the 7th house can be a little bit of a tiebreaker. It can almost be too assertive. So being retrograde and then going opposite your ruler Venus in the middle of this week can potentially present a better opportunity to get the power dynamics right in all sorts of connections with people. Now, as the week draws to a close, Mercury ends that retrograde. We'll all take that, of course, but then you have the full moon. It's a full moon that potentially does offer you some different options, particularly in terms of your future direction where the Sun and Mercury are. But you also have an opportunity to enjoy yourself too. And it's that time of the year when that's part and parcel of the seasonal pleasures. But I feel this year having Pluto in your sign along with Venus gives you a lot more sense of self. And that's a good thing, particularly after Pluto has in some ways dismantled, deconstructed many Aquarius people since 2008. So there could be some fresh starts, some new connections, or if you are a creative person or a person who's happy to take part in a team whilst retaining your individual talents, there are some excellent opportunities this week for you. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too. Pisces, your week commencing the 9th of December forecast sees the sun still high in the sky in your situation. The 10th house is where we connect to the world. For some people, that can be about their professional interests, their jobs, their businesses. But for others, it's just those personal goals that really are important. But Mercury has been retrograde in this area, suggesting there could have been some snags, delays, misunderstandings, which have been frustrating. But ironically, right at the start of this week, even though Mars too has gone retrograde, its thrust links to Mercury's communicational skills, and you could, if you really are clear about the prize you want to seize, make a decisive move. However, as ever with a feeling water sign, the emotion of situations is important, which will manifest itself with the full moon at the end of the week. But that's linking back to Neptune, your ruler. And also, Saturn has been asking you some big questions over the last couple of years. So as much as you may want or may have the desire to raise your profile, be more successful, you have to have the physical wherewithal, and also you need to feel that it's comfortable for you. So those are some of the things that you're considering at the present time. And also Venus has dived deep in your 12th house. That can be a time when relationships that aren't working very well do come under a period of deep consideration, maybe all the way to separation. But that's only going to happen if you're really not happy. For single Piscean people, there may be someone you encounter in a very practical situation, and if you don't speak to that person, there could be a real awareness that there's an electricity between you, which could be quite exciting. There's also the chance that someone you work with can become much more important in your situation, even if you don't quite show your hand at the present time. But by the end of this week, when it comes to whether you reach for the stars or protect your home and emotional situation with the full moon, Neptune, which is very much to do with your sensitivities, is going to be a big part of the decisions you make. Please see beneath this video for your in-depth year 2025 deep dive video forecast. You can also get your free year 2025 general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast when you order your personal forecast for next year. Please see below for that too.